This is the Minding Your Own Business podcast, brought to you by Elder Research. Each episode will bring in data and analytics gurus from around the world as they regale us with their data analytics stories and enlighten us with their secrets for how to turn data into actionable insights. Now, here's our host, Evan Wimpy, who will guide us as we dare to mind our own business.
Hello and welcome to the Minding Your Own Business podcast. I'm your host, Evan Wimpy, and today I'm excited to introduce Selma Dogic. Selma's the Senior Manager of Analytics at Carter's. Excited to learn everything that she does with data there. We know we can trust her because her background is in economics and she studied at Georgia Tech, just like yours truly. So very happy to have her on the show today. Selma, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
All right, fantastic. To get started, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you got into analytics and sort of what you do now at Carter's?
Yes, it's actually a funny start, at least to me. What I started, and I'm glad that you mentioned that I have a background in econ. I decided to go to school because I was really interested in helping use data to make better informed policies, right? So like everybody who's young and in college, I kind of wanted to save the world in my own little way through data, right? And so I had these big thoughts about going into economic development, particularly international development. And I started working in the nonprofit consulting space. So I did some consulting for state and local government. We would do fiscal impact analyses, economic impact analyses, again, really using data to inform better policies. But what I really learned from that was that I had a passion for data and I had an even bigger passion for analytics, and I wanted to really dive into that. So I went to school at Tech and got my master's in economics to do the same thing. And then I tell people I sold my soul to corporate and started working for NCR in the analytics space. I was on a team of data scientists over at for NCR. Then I went to Home Depot for a brief period of time, again working in analytics, and then that also really, I think, did a good. It really taught me a lot about kind of customers and the retail space. And so when my former boss from NCR asked me if I would be willing to join his team at Carter's, I was like, this is perfect, right? Because I was doing all of this kind of learning and really getting excited about consumer goods, which is a little bit different than NCR, that I was like, this is perfect. So that's how I got here.
Very nice. Now I'm super familiar with Carter's. I am a father to young children, so on the shopper end I'm aware, but I suspect pre-children, I wouldn't have been able to pick Carter's out of a lineup. So can you give us just a little idea of what Carter's is? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we are the leading brand for baby and small children apparel. And we're doing some things on big kids too. So, now as our kids are kind of growing, we can remain kind of a part of our customer base. We also have brands with Oshkosh is one of our brands, Skip Hop, so baby gear, really cool stuff there.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I think to any parents of young kids listening would be very, very familiar and very pleased, sure. I think. I do appreciate I appreciate the background, and you've got a history at Home Depot. We've had I don't know if you had any overlap, or Home Depot is a huge place, but previous guests, John Weininger and John Carroll, were part of the Met Analytics team at Home Depot. They were great, had some really nice insights from Home Depot there. So to the listener, I invite you to listen to those episodes. But for today at Carter's, can you tell us where you sit in Carter's? There's certainly different functions. Do you sit with a particular business unit? Are you centralized?
Yeah, I actually, I sit on the IT side, but I'm a little bit of a unicorn in that I'm not really an IT person. Don't tell them that. But my role, and I think that's why I love it so much, is that I get to be the liaison between IT and the business. And so I would say by and large, analytics roles sit on the business, right? So they're kind of embedded in different business teams. But what I've seen, and even at Carter's, right, it's no different, but the data's somewhere else, right? So the data is all kind of managed by IT teams, and they oversee the schemas and all of that on the data landscape. And then you have business teams who are trying to make sense of it and trying to even just access it can sometimes be, a big headache. And so my role is to kind of bridge the gap between the two and to accelerate and enable analytics on the business side.
Okay, fantastic. Is the business side, is that you mentioned a few brands that live under Carter's? You've probably got other retailers that you sell to. You've got different business functions. Is the business like a specific brand, or is it a specific function like marketing or supply?
Yeah, so we kind of our teams are structured by function. So we have the pricing team, the marketing team, supply chain team.
Okay, awesome. As you are liaising between sort of the data and the infrastructure owners and the business stakeholders, are you prioritizing? Presumably there's some competing needs. Everybody wants. Do you, is that part of what you and your team do, is help to prioritize?
Yep. Yeah. So and I think it might help too if I kind of share a little bit about the way that our broader team is structured. I sit on the global data and analytics team, right? And so under that umbrella, we have integrations, data engineering, BI, and then my analytics COE. So we have the data engineering team who works with the integrations team to really kind of bring all of the data into our data landscape, right? And they do all the ETL and everything. The BI team is working with the majority of our business insights consumers, right? Who are leveraging dashboards and data to drive decisions. My team is interfacing with a smaller portion of these analytics-based business teams to enable and empower them to build analytics solutions, right? And that can come in the form of they're the stakeholders or the business sponsors, and we're the builders, right? So we are hands-on keyboard developing analytics solutions, analytics models, and deploying them. Or it could be through the lens of consulting and enabling them to do it themselves. So giving them the right tools, technology, and training to do it themselves. And when it comes to priorities, right, because we deal with smaller groups that are more in the weeds, and we can kind of scale, right, by building these hybrid teams with them, where we're not the only ones who are hands-on keyboard, right? Either we're consulting them or they're consulting us, because they have the business knowledge and we have the analytics and subject matter expertise, right? So like I said, that's the cool part about our team, is that we can really partner with the business to build these kind of hybrid teams. But no matter what, right? No matter where I've been, there are always these competing timelines, use cases, business cases, right? So the way that we really prioritize is based on feasibility, based on business prioritization. And a part of that feasibility is not only like, can we do it, but when we do it, what decisions can we tie to this project, right? What decisions are we enabling? And if we can't really tie it to a specific decision, or we can't draw that line, then it's really not in our interest to take it on. And so we leave it in our backlog, right? We leave the conversations to be had later, when we can kind of get more buy-in, more sponsorship, when it's more feasible, right? But it's really important to us that every project that we take on has a direct line to a strategic initiative from the top down, right? It has to be tied into the decisions that our leaders are going to be making.
Yeah, I think, boy, you really just highlighted sort of an ideal structure, an ideal case there. It's great. If it's not tied to a business strategy, it's not a priority. And if you can't action on, if it's not going to drive some decision, then
there's no value.
Yeah, it's tough with the data mine and the data science. Some things are fun to explore, but that's for, I don't know,
And
academia.
we have examples of that too, right? Where it was important to us because it was, we had a big leader be the sponsor. And once we brought that project to fruition and had the results and were socializing those results, my number one question is, okay, well, what decision are you going to make from this, right? Like it's just data until you do something about it. And we couldn't tie it to a decision. And that for me was a kind of a failure, right? Definitely a big lesson learned. I mean, I just don't think that any team, right, has the bandwidth to do things like that, to do the projects. There are projects that bring more value, that are more feasible when you tie them to a decision.
Yep, absolutely. Doesn't matter your accuracy or area under the curve or whatever it is. If it's not improving a decision, then what's it there for? Maybe, and you don't have to get into specifics, but maybe you can talk through what delivery looks like in a good case. You work on a project, it's tied to some strategy, it helps drive a decision. Do you just hand over a model? Do you hand over some decision criteria framework? How do you deliver your results to the business so that they can make a better decision?
Yeah, so I think actually, so for a lot of data science projects, I think the first part of it where you do a lot of the discovery and the research is often overlooked. And then the last part of it where you do a lot of socialization and sharing insights, and you're doing a lot of presentations that gets overlooked, right? Like as a data scientist, we're really, I'd say we get really excited in that middle layer where we're doing the development, we're doing the data engineering, right? The KPIs that we really care about are not the KPIs that are gonna empower the business to make the decisions, but we're thinking about MAPEs and AUCs, right? And we're thinking about MLOps and all of that. So I could tell you, like, my answer could be, well, we do all of our, model monitoring and deployment, and we have these triggers set up and all of that. But the truth is that at the onset, we do a lot of discovery and a lot of research as we frame out our business question and like the timeline and our milestones and everything. As we do our model development, we take steps to iterate, right, to improve. Like, not only are we like doing the data engineering and feature engineering to help train better models and do that, but we're also like learning ourselves, right? Like because we're really having to embed ourselves in the business. There's so much research that goes into that throughout the life cycle of a project. And we're also developing it in a way that we can enable MLOps, right? So thinking about the way that we automate flows, the way that we automate triggers. At the end of it, when we produce our forecasts, when we produce our predictions, a lot of it is how do we allow our business users to consume that, and how do we serve these insights? So we send all of our predictions back into our data landscape through the MLOps framework that we've built out, and then we build dashboards. That's kind of our primary way to communicate insights with our business users, and that's the primary way that they consume those insights are through dashboards. But again, that doesn't mean that we build a dashboard and we give them the link to it and that they're like using it every day to make decisions. Once that dashboard is out there, there's a lot of work that goes into play into having them adopt, right? Now this new data asset.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I would love it, however, you can expand on how they try to adopt that. I think probably to the listener, there are plenty of cases where we've built a great dashboard. It does exactly what you need, and nobody's logged into it in the last 6 months, and it goes unused. So are there any ways, like once you've delivered, you've been communicative and you've got a dashboard that's useful, are there any ways that you follow up? Or is there some process in place that you try to ensure that folks are using them and using them the way they're intended?
Yeah, so I think even if you're building dashboards that aren't related to any ML models that you've built, the method is the same, right? The first thing, if you're replacing something that they're already using on their team, I think that's really, it's not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but that's a really big opportunity for you because they're already dependent, right, on something. They're already making decisions off of some data. And now you're serving it in a way that's more efficient, more effective, right, by way of like visual analytics, more efficient, but through automation, things like that, right? But again, they're already dependent on this data and using it to make decisions. So that's already a small win for you. The way that they're making the decisions is big, right? So really keying into their process and using that to inform the way that you build your ML ops architecture, the way that you build your dashboards, that's going to be important because that's going to help drive the adoption. And making it digestible for them. Again, sometimes we, as the data scientists, as the analysts, we're always kind of like craving that next gen, right? Like the big new thing in data and analytics, and that can be hard for the end user to digest and consume. So keying into their processes, really understanding how they're making those decisions and servicing that first, like leaning into that, and then showing them, like walking them through, okay, this is like the data that you're using to make your decisions. You're having to dump all of it out and create these pivot tables and analyze, and it takes you like 3 or 4 days, right? Here's a dashboard that does all of that for you. Plus, it gives you a prediction, and there's no heavy lifting on your part. You just have to consume it and make that decision. Really walking them through that and making it a reality for them, I think, is important. That doesn't mean they're going to be logging into it every day. There are still going to be dashboards, right, that are going to take time for users to adopt. Now, that's where you have to key into a champion. And I have seen strategies really lag when we didn't have the right stakeholders or champions tuned in, right? When we weren't talking to the right people. When you identify a champion, somebody who gets it just as much as you do, but they're on the other side of it, that can like transcend your analytics strategy, and really drive adoption. And I've seen that happen.
Absolutely, yeah. Can't get more agreement from me there. Getting an analytic champion, doesn't matter how good the results are, and sure, removing barriers to use, but if you've got somebody who's with you and a champion along the way in the build process, then the implementation is certainly helped out. So it sounds like you guys have a really well organized process on delivery there. I want to step back pre-delivery, pre-model build, thinking about the data that you use that seems to sit sort of in that centralized in the IT space. And maybe you can give some color here, but when I think about Carter's, I think apparel that's on sale at a bunch of other retailers, at third-party retailer or department store or something. But then I also think, and you can correct me, I think you have your own stores as well. So I'm curious what the mix is like there. Is your store data a lot easier to come by? Is that more usable?
Yeah, so our brick and mortar data and our e-commerce data, because right, it's our source system, is much easier to access and kind of right do all the e-tailing and making it available for our analytics use cases, our analytics users and BI users. There are some partners, like some partner data that's much easier to access than other partner data. But I would say that our IT department, right, our data engineering teams, along with the partnership with the business, it has done a really good job of making that data available within our data system. And I think that's another really great thing. So you mentioned that we're centralized. Really, our analytics model is federated in that we have a data engineering team and a BI team, right? That does a global data and analytics team that does all the hard work in making the data available in our data landscape, right? In this kind of like broader environment. But we also have business teams that are super tuned in with the data, right? Again, and that's what I was saying before, is that if you are trying to make something more efficient or predict something that the business is already leveraging to make decisions, you're already kind of like keyed into a big opportunity. And we have that at Carter's. The majority of our teams are leveraging data to make decisions, and they're really keyed into that data. So they can tell us, right, like, oh, the data that you're using from this partner, right, the selling partner, doesn't look accurate because I'm pulling it from their portal. And then they help us reconcile and build better processes. It's really the partnership between the business and IT that I think is transcends.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. And the term partner escaped me. I didn't know what to call them. I in my mind, there's like some tension there. They own the data, you own the data, but I love, maybe there's some element of that, but you even call them partners. So it seems like a very, hopefully a symbiotic relationship between you and the other.
Yeah, and it's
partners.
Definitely like the partnership is led by our business teams, right? And so we partner with our business teams in Carter's, and they enable that partnership with our vendors and our selling partners. Yep.
Awesome. So we've had a couple of guests on here from other consumer goods companies, and a lot of their effort circles around customer lifetime value. How valuable do we expect this customer to be? And they're looking, they've got long-term products or products that you can buy throughout your lifetime. Your products restrict you a little bit. You outgrow Carter's before too long, and you can have a lot of kids, and I recommend folks do. But that customer lifetime value is sort of restricted. Does that change any of the effort of where you point your analytics and trying to understand that as you just don't have the longevity in a customer?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think it changes the equation too much, in that most CPG companies are thinking about like cross-sell, upsell, what do you have in your basket, right? And how can we add to it, essentially, right? So they're not just looking at, we have a customer, how do we retain that customer, but how do we cross-sell to that customer, upsell to that customer? Another part too is you don't have to have a baby to buy Carter's, right? So your friends are having babies, we Carter's makes great gifts, things like that, right? And then that also does come into play when we think about strategy. And again, I don't think that it changes the equation too much relative to some of the other CPG companies, and that we're thinking about how can we market to different types of customers, right? How can we evolve our product so that we are meeting more customers where they are, right? So we are aging up with our customers. We're not staying in the, baby to toddler age ranges anymore. So there are definitely things that we're doing to kind of evolve with our customers. And when we think about kind of analytics, what does that look like? I mean, right, it's our market basket, our customer demographics, how do we market to them, how does our product evolve, things like that. And again, I don't think that even if we were, selling to adults, which I think have a longer lifetime span, right? I don't think that necessarily changes, right? Like I think that they're doing the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, it's good. Selma, awesome. You have really painted a nice picture of how your team supports different business units, how you collect data, how you prioritize analytic efforts and serve that out. Let's scrap all that for just a second, and it's just the Selma show. You've worked with a bunch of different business units, and maybe you just put on your sort of selfish hat for a second, and you get to point your analytic efforts and your team's efforts at any problem that you want, whatever you think is interesting, and everybody else is aligned, from the IT and the BI folks to the actual business. you just get to work on whatever you want to work on. So in that sort of hand wavy scenario, what's a project that you would like to chew on?
And I think this is kind of a trick question because for a lot of your listeners, I think they're gonna think, oh my God, like what's the next use case? What's the next model? Right now, like for me, there are a couple of things that are really important. Not just like that are really interesting to me, but I think that are important given the context of where we are, right? So like supply chain issues, that's really important. How do we make sure that our products are arriving on time to our customer, regardless of like where they're buying, whether that's online or in store, buy online, pick up in store, things like that. And the other thing that I think is super interesting to me is how do we again evolve our product to meet our new customers and their shopping behavior that's changing. So like the demographics of our customer base are changing significantly. Right, like now different generations are becoming parents and they're buying different products and they have different motivators, right? And they have different criteria when they're making their purchases, but they're also shopping in ways that it's not that we haven't necessarily seen them before, but I think the mix of the way that they're shopping and again their motivators are definitely different. So that's interesting to me, right? Like how do we market better to our evolving customers and how do we make sure that our products are arriving on time to those customers? But if it was just my show and I could do whatever I wanted, I would not do those projects because I think that there's something more interesting or something that is more valuable to an organization than the next machine learning model that you're going to build. And that is data literacy and data culture at a company. I'm really, really interested in building out well-structured and well-maintained data domains for the organization and having the business users equipped to leverage those data domains to make their business decisions. And so when we were talking about earlier, kind of like how do you ensure if you build this like really amazing dashboard that people are using it to make decisions, you can only do that by having data literacy and a strong data culture at an organization. And if you think about the companies that are doing it right, if you're thinking about kind of like your northern stars, those are the companies that like there's analytics at their core. And I'm not going to do any name dropping, but right, like think about it. Like who are the data and analytics leaders? They're always the companies that have really strong data cultures and have really strong data literacy at their organizations, and that's what I'm interested in. Again, all of these like machine learning models and all of these use cases, they're like super interesting to me. I think that they can be game changers at an organization, but not to the extent that data literacy and data culture can.
Wow. That's a powerful answer with a couple of use cases caveated early on. I will say, Selma, I think after speaking with you for the last 25 minutes, I think you're in a great position to help drive data culture at Carter's. You speak very well on it. You seem very excited about it. And I'm excited to see what you can do there and help foster that data literacy growth. Hopefully you've inspired a few other folks that are listening in today. But that is all the time. That's the last question. Selma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is so much fun.
All right. Make sure to like and subscribe to get the next episode. Thanks for joining us today on the Minding Your Own Business podcast.